Hi everyone, welcome to a video about the Hollyland Lark Max wireless mic. Now, when you're upgrading the firmware, to me anyway, I found the actual process for upgrading it just a little bit confusing. There's actually a couple of files you need to upload, one for the transceiver, one for the receiver, and one for the transmitter. So I wanted to just basically go through the process and show you how you upgrade the firmware, just in case you find it a little bit confusing like I did. In order to update the firmware on the Hollyland Lark Max wireless microphones, we need to go to the Hollyland website and find the download page, as I have here, and we need to find the latest firmware, which is 1.0.417. We can then start to proceed to download the firmware, and obviously that's going to take a few minutes to download depending on the speed of your connection. Okay, now that we have the download, we should have a folder that looks something like this. So we have a couple of folders, one for Mac, one for Win, and a couple of different files here. Now it's actually quite confusing, or rather I found it a little bit confusing, to make sure that you copy the right file to the right device. So the one that's marked with an _tx at the end here is for the actual transmitter, and the one that's got the RX at the end is for the receiver. So it's very important to make sure that you copy the correct file to the transmitter and the correct file to the receiver, otherwise things are really not going to work for you. Okay, so first of all we're going to upgrade the transmitter itself. So let's make sure we select the file with the TX at the end. And of course we need to connect our Hollyland Lark transmitter to our computer with a USB-C cable. Now I find it doesn't really matter whether the transmitter is actually switched on or actually switched off when you connect it. But as soon as you do, it's going to start flashing orange to say that it's actually ready for a file to be copied across. So here I have the transmitter connected to the computer because it's flashing orange, and you can see that we have a drive appearing and mine says no name. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to copy a file, and it's probably easier to open up a couple of different windows, one for the actual archive with the firmware and one for the actual drive for the transmitter, just to make life a bit easier. Okay, so highlighting the file, we just need to drag it across and just copy it onto our no-name drive for the transmitter. And it's very important to make sure we put it into the root folder, the actual very first folder we see, not into any subfolder. Okay, to do the actual firmware updates for the transmitter, we just need to now eject the drive from our computer. So I'm just going to eject the no-name drive, and obviously the window will disappear. And we should notice straight away, or very shortly afterwards, maybe after a slight pause, that the transmitter will start to flash purple colour, and that means that it's detected there as a firmware and it's going to start to do the firmware update process. Okay, and after a short pause it should stop flashing purple and it's going to probably just switch off. And once you've done that, you should actually have the transmitter upgraded to the latest firmware. Okay, so let's now turn our attention to the actual receiver itself. So what we need to do for this guy is we need to go to the system settings on the receiver. So that's a case of pressing in the button on the left hand side to access the menu, and then turning the little knob to the right all the way until you see the little cog for the system settings. And then we're going to click the actual button on the left hand side of the actual turning button to enter that option, and then we're going to use the wheel once again to access the update mode, which is the little green arrow. Now you should see the option to go to upgrade mode. So when this appears, it's a cue to actually plug in the receiver into the computer with a USB-C. And as soon as you press the yes button, move across the yes option, you should notice after a moment a drive appear on your computer. Now this is the drive, just like for the transmitter, it's actually for the receiver, and this is a removable drive that we're going to copy the file to. Okay, so just like the transmitter, we now have a file called, a drive called no name, and that is for our receiver itself. Now you may find on the odd occasion that the actual drive, it doesn't actually appear, even if you've got it connected to computer. So it's just a case of going back through the steps to the system settings and going to the upgrade mode like we did before, and just hitting yes, and you should find that the drive will then appear. Okay, so now what we're going to do is click on the file that has the RX letters at the end for the receiver, and we're going to just drag that across and copy it onto our no name drive. And notice there aren't any files in this drive at all. So it's going to be the only file that exists in this folder. Now this is going to take quite a long time. I don't know what the speed of this the drive on the receiver is, but it's incredibly slow. Probably USB 0.0000.1 back in the dark ages. Very, very slow. So don't panic if it takes a long time to copy the file. I mean, it took probably about 4 or 5 minutes actually to copy it on my machine. Don't know why, but it did. So just be patient, and you should find eventually it does actually copy across. Okay, so what we need to do next is just reject or eject the drive, just like we did for the transmitter. And after a few moments, it should check that the firmware is on the drive, and it will start to do the actual firmware updates. And you should see a message appear on the screen saying that it's actually successful once it's done. And you'll find the receiver could more than likely start and want to restart itself after the firmware is updated.